So here we go with normal challenge number 5. Now I'm going to auto-populate with my main characters here, which I'm still using the main 3 starters. And as you can see, we've got over here an archer. We're going to want to take him out quickly. And then over here, the fighter who's likely to remain stationary, and these 3 great swordsmen, who we're really going to be using that dragon fire on. So I'm just going to mess around with the starting positions here. There we go. That should do it. And let's get to it. So first things first, we check out that danger zone. I'm not too worried that Dany's in the middle of it, because really what we're going to be doing here is a lot of work to take out that archer and keep her out of harm's way. If he closes the distance and starts causing issues, we should be able to take him out pretty quick. We're going to move the fighter up here just a little bit, and now we can end our turn. And as you can see, my archer took his out. Yours may or may not survive that first shot. If he doesn't, go ahead and try again, and just don't take the first hit. Let yours first attack on that guy be a counterattack, and then hit him with your special later on. Luckily, I don't need to worry about that. We're just going to let the fire come in here and really work on wiping those guys out. And now I can use my area of attack archer here to keep going. Take a swing there. And here we go. My archer's going to be gone, but that's all right. I've got more than enough to finish this off. That's the last of the original great swords. Now my Dany has her fire ready earlier than you guys will, because I went ahead and upgraded her traits, which allow for a faster revive. Many of you will need to wait till turn 4. And will also, if you don't have your soldiers upgraded as much as I do, may want to start moving your Dany down closer to that fighter so she can help take him out at the end. As for some of you, many of your fighters will be gone right now. Many of your soldiers, rather. And again, we've got another fire ability, but I'm going to skip it for now just because I don't think that's realistic for most of you. And most of you will probably be ending this on the 5th turn anyhow. And here's where a lot of you would be using that fire. So we're going to go ahead and input it, and that's going to take that fighter out close enough that our last soldier here could finish him off. Some of you will have had to use Dany to do that, which is why I was telling you may want to move her in closer than I did if you are not as overpowered at this point. Hey guys, this is Valen here from Valen Games, here to run you through the Daenerys Stormborn Field of Fire challenges on normal 5 through 10. I am for the moment going to skip over easy 5 through 10 and normal 1 through 5. I'm just a bit too overpowered for those, I think, to be particularly effective in showing you what to do. However, if enough people request it, I will make an attempt at a video with at least my observations on some things that might help in the levels. Now, 5 through 6, I am going to be running also at an overpowered level, though it shouldn't be as big of a discrepancy. But 7 through 10 I recorded as I did them, so they'll pretty much give you a how-to so long as your characters are in my general power range. Let's get into it. Now, as we move on into normal 6, just remember, this is about the point where a lot of you will need to go back and start re-upgrading your Dany. A lot of those trade upgrades, tactic cards upgrades, and level upgrades can really go a long way towards making these next few levels easier. So any chance you get to move her along, you're going to want to do so. Now, as you can see here on this map, we do have some pretty maneuverable enemies, but the good news is none of them are going to give us those extra great swords that you've seen on previous levels. The biggest threats here are going to be those bowmen, because as always, if our soldiers die, though they won't in my case, or at least not all of them at first, but for many of you, you want that Dany in a nice defensible position, and you want to use her dragon and your soldiers to target those archers real quickly. And that's because once that's done, you can just get her in a defensible position like she's at now, and just use the dragon fire and counterattacks to take them out. But here we go. We're going to use the great sword right off the bat, along with our archer here. Keep him out of the counterattack distance. And the reason we're doing this instead of hanging back is because they start off close enough to us that they're going to hit us right off the bat to begin with. If you find that your soldiers are too weak to survive the enemy's first turn, that's an area where you would want to restart and hold off attack at first, so that they can survive the counterattacks long enough to get their specials off, which is really going to be great in combination with Dany's fire. Now remember, our priority targets here are always going to be those archers. The shieldsmen, I'm not nearly as worried about. Now, because of how low health my enemies were, I went ahead and used Dany to attack. For those of you who may not have such low health enemies at that point, you're going to want to keep her in that position so she can remain nice and defensible. Alright, so as we get close to ending this, do remember that the next 3 levels I'm going to show you, I actually played through them for the first time as I recorded for you guys. So unlike these last couple, you'll actually be able to see what it looks like when I'm at an appropriate level of power for the level. And hopefully that will be a bit more help to you. Alright guys, so sorry I forgot to show you the intro screen, but we are in fact moving into Field of Fire Normal 7. Now, if my audio is a bit off, I do apologize. I had to record it separately from the video this time. But as you can see, we are dealing with 2 great swordsmen, a shieldsman, and a fighter. Sorry, make that 2 shieldsmen and a fighter. Now, it's those front units that are the most maneuverable and that we need to worry about the most. So what I did was I positioned my bowman off behind that barrier so that he can kind of snipe at them a little bit, and then I'm going to use my other melee units just to run interference. And really most of the work here is going to be done by that bowman and by Dany, who I'm also keeping back behind that barrier for as long as possible here. Now the reason I targeted those great swordsmen first is because they simply can do the most damage there. Plus I also wanted to take out that fighter who can be a bit more maneuverable. Those shieldmen, while they are certainly a bit more maneuverable than the great swords, they don't do a lot of damage, so they're going to have some trouble getting past my great swordsman and my fighter, who can hold them off for a while Dany and the archer do their work. Obviously, whenever you can group the enemy into that dragon fire as much as possible, that's always going to be helpful. But beyond that, it's really just a matter of holding the enemy back while you hit them from the distance. And as you can see, it does help to have a great swordsman who's got a lot of health built up, so that he can really just kind of stand in there and hold the enemy off for quite some time. You'll see that this is going to take the majority of our turns, and at certain points you're going to have to be a little bit creative with where you position that bowman in order to take out some of those weaker units. They do heal if you leave them alone too long, so you want to hit them as much as possible. Alright, there goes my fighter, which means now it's time to get really creative with how I move my remaining units, and to do everything I can to keep the enemy gathered together for my area of effect attacks. We're about halfway through the turns here, and I am now grouping Dany and the bowman off in the corner because Dany has that heal effect, remember, so she's almost going to work as a shield for the bowmen at this point as we hold them off. And since they're both grouped together there, you're going to see that it's going to make it very easy to keep hitting them with those area of effect attacks. By and large, you'll also notice that I'm not going on the offensive with Dany there, and that is primarily in order to allow her to use that heal, and she'll mainly do the damage on her counters and when the enemy are getting hit by her dragon. Now, since I am actually running this one on a pretty appropriate level for you guys, oh, by the way, you'll notice how I took out that barrier there. That was to allow them to regroup together and make sure I can hit them a bit more easily before the one who was sitting behind the barrier healed. You guys may have to run this slightly differently, depending on exactly how your characters are built, but this should give you... Alright guys, so here we are, we're moving into normal 8. And again, I'm recording the audio afterwards here, so if I'm a bit off, I do apologize. But as you can see, we're going to have some maneuverable units up front with those horsemen and the bowmen right behind them. Those bowmen are going to be pretty difficult for us, but I am going to work on trying to take them and those horsemen out as quickly as I can, grouping them together so I can really hit them both at the same time with my AoE. You can see that I focused my archer and my Dany behind my fighter and great swordsman. Fighter didn't last very long, but that's okay. I simply don't have him built particularly well. I haven't been lucky enough to get good enough shards for him. I'm working on another character to use in his place, but he's still not where he needs to be. But that's alright, makes this a bit more challenging and a bit more fun to show you, and maybe even a bit more helpful to you guys who are just borderline going to be able to pass this. As you can see, I use my greatsword to really focus a lot of those enemies on me. My Dany and my bowman are close, but not quite together. Archer isn't going to last much longer, but hopefully can take a unit or two with him, and there you see he's going to take their last archer as well. He's going to die off of that burn at the end of his next turn. And then I'm going to have Dany moved up into that little corner there so that only one enemy can hit her at a time, since all they have left are melee units. And this is going to be very helpful because you're going to see that she is able to heal as they continue to hit her, so long as I don't go on the offensive. I may throw in an attack here and there, and that's mainly going to be to take out those ones who are already super low health, because there is, of course, that turn limit, and I don't want this to take too long. Oh, sorry, I did seem to have a bit of an internet connection issue there, but it shouldn't get in the way of you seeing the rest. But yeah, so that's the nice thing. Once you've got those bowmen gone, this level's pretty much yours, so long as you can position Dany there on the defensive, and so long as her... Okay, so moving into normal number 9 here, you're going to see we're going to start off surrounded by 4 horsemen and an archer. Looks a bit like an ambush. We're going to want to strategically position our forces here so that we can get Dany and the bowmen to move out of the way, using the melees to hold off everybody else and kind of lure them into grouping together so Dany can hit everybody with her area of effect. It's going to take a bit of creative movement, but it should be doable. As you can see, I'm not going on the offensive here. That's because they'll just kill these guys' health if we do. We really want them to last as long as possible while Dany gets out of the way and off into that lower right-hand corner. And also to live long enough to use their specials and do some damage. It's also worth noting, by the way, if you did not notice earlier when I was showing you how my Dany was leveled up, at this point I've put her traits to the 4th level in that lower hand trait bar, because if you go all the way and upgrade that 4th one in to its maximum amount, you get a 100% chance to cool down her special abilities, and that is going to be enormously useful in these levels, since you only have a 2-turn cooldown rather than a 3-turn cooldown. And so now it's just a matter of bringing them together in a place where I only have to deal with counterattacking 2 of them at a time. We're not going to go on the offensive for the most part here. We're just going to let them come to us and then hit them with those specials. And that's really all there is to it. There we go. Now with Field of Fire normal 10, and as you can see this is my first go around on it, though I am recording the audio afterwards, you're going to see we've got a lot of great swordsmen right up at the front with a shieldman and a fighter at the back. I assumed at the time I set this up, and I turned out to be right, that some of those rear guys would be stationary there. And then generate more of those great swordsmen as you see. Now with the previous levels, those great swordsmen that are getting extra generated, they are going to be lower health than the ones up front. And so those ones up front are really our priority to take out. And then at the same time, we want to kind of slowly work Dany towards the back there, because that fighter is going to have a huge amount of health. And will be very difficult to take out if she gets to him too late. So as always, you want to be careful to position those area of effects to hit as many of the enemies as possible. And as always, we're going to use our soldier units to gather the enemy into nice big groups for us. Again, don't worry too much about those great swords that keep getting auto-generated in that lower right-hand corner. They are not much of a threat. The key is to take out these front guys as quickly as possible and then get Dany in position to kill that fighter. We'll just watch it go for a second here. Do remember to be strategic with who you hit, paying close attention to how you really want to make sure that you're maximizing the life of those soldiers while still allowing Dany her freedom of movement there. And since each of us are going to have our own personal setup on the soldiers, it's very important that you make sure that you really think carefully who's going to do what and when. Now at this point, all we've really got left are going to be those 3 great swordsmen there at the bottom right-hand corner, but those were all auto-generated. I'm not very worried about those, so I can start getting Dany in position, and then we're just going to basically use our archer to pick them off and then hit them as targets of opportunity. We're even going to be able to draw some of them in towards that fighter as we hit him with the dragon, as you're going to see. Now, like I said, he's got a lot of health, so you really want to get to him about no later than halfway through this. Earlier if you can, if your damage isn't as high as mine. You really don't want to engage him directly with Dany, except maybe in the last strike or 2. I think I make a little bit of an issue with that earlier on. And the reason for that is because he will kill her if you go on the offensive with him. So, here we go. You'll see that I'm not attacking him. I'm going to let him hit me so that I can heal. Similar strategy to what you've seen me use in previous levels. Hit him from afar with that bowman. Remember, he's not going to move at all, so you don't really need to close the distance unless you see a strategic need to do so to get in a bit of extra damage. Which I am going to do with my great swordsman here because he's my heaviest hitter, but he's only going to get in a couple of hits before that fighter takes him out. But that's alright, we're almost at the end here. You're going to see this is going to really come down to the wire. But a win is a win with these challenges. We don't really need to worry about the 3 stars with them. So long... Oh, by the way, you can see what I just did there. I wanted to give him a chance to regenerate so we can get 1 more hit in, or 2 more hits in if we can. Let him get another counter attack in. That's very